Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off.
Blast off on another episode of Hero Paranormal Podcast, broadcasting from the base at La Madre Mountain, just south of Area 51. My name is Ryan, the original outlaw of the airwaves, bringing you an epic episode today. On today's podcast, we have a couple of guests I've been wanting to talk to for a long time. These are people that really know their stuff. They know what they're talking about. They've been there. They've done that. They got the t-shirt. We are really, really lucky to have them on today. We have Mike Wazowski and Rainbow Ridali. And Rainbow and Mike have been in the paranormal world for over 40 years, each as experiencers, and they've done extensive work with Sasquatch, portals, vortexes, and I guess all things paranormal. And they have an amazing website, Truth Seeker Forum. Definitely check that out. Mike was a founding member and director of the New Mexico UFO organization, and he has 118 original videos talking about research and firsthand experience on the subject. Now, they have a daughter who has also had a strange experience in Tucson, Arizona, with a shapeshifter type entity. I assume this is going to be an absolutely epic podcast. I can't acknowledge them enough for coming on with me. I've been trying for some time to get the two of them on because it's twice the bang for your buck, so to speak. They're both just extremely intelligent, knowledgeable researchers who have been doing this for over 40 years. So many thanks, Mike and Rainbow. Welcome to the Hero Paranormal Podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ryan. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Yeah.
And our listeners don't know, but we've had quite the uphill battle with technical difficulties. But that's part of the territory when you deal with this stuff. It just kind of happens that way.
Yeah, we're going to blame it on the heat, Ryan. Sorry.
Yeah. And, you know, on my end, it's a huge, huge bonus to have you both on. Rainbow, I'm so happy that you're on because I know that you've both done extensive work with portals, vortexes, Sasquatch, shapeshifters, and, you know, you have an amazing website, Truth Seeker Forum, that I've mentioned to our listeners in the introduction. And I've spoken with Mike before, and it was absolutely mind-blowing. And I really feel like I'm getting a super bonus, and same with the listeners, having you on here as well. So it's a real pleasure to have you, Rainbow.
Oh, thank you.
So let me ask you, this is kind of a strange question, but how did you both get so involved in the paranormal and in vortexes and basically seeking after these truths?
You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Ryan, mine is a long history. I guess it's when I started when I was probably a teenager. And I just had a real fascination. And, of course, I read about, you know, UFOs. I guess was probably the first toe in the water. And then I got into Sasquatch. I actually was going to do, when I was as a high school graduation trip, I was going to go out to Seattle area and then, you know, go into the woods or the wilderness with a good friend of mine. But unfortunately, my good friend got in a car accident and died just before we left or before we were going to go. But that was a sad thing, but it still motivated me to continue. I just, been doing it, I guess, all my life. You know, I've been involved from a standpoint, I had the UFO Paranormal Forum in New Mexico. I helped out with a Atlanta UFO forum for several years. And, I've been, had 13 or 14 years now with the Truth Seeker Forum. And then this last year, of course, we have our very quite successful video YouTube channel, Dimensional Walking, a paranormal journey. So, I just been doing it a very long time. And when I did the forum in Albuquerque, we would bring in people from all over the United States and some people from other parts of the world and talk. So it was one of the largest forums that there were. We would meet right almost at the gate, Kirkland Air Force Base. So, it was pretty incredible because we had actually military, et cetera, coming to our meeting and just sitting in the back, just observing. So it was really kind of strange. It was a little bit eerie, but it was just added to just the amazing stuff that was going on in that particular area. So anyways, I've been involved for a very long time doing the research, living in Atlanta. I did a lot of research up and down the Appalachian Mountains with abductees and contactees. Probably did about 1,500 to 2,000 interviews. So, I just been doing it for a very long time and enjoying doing it. So, Rainbow?
I'm the typical experiencer from childhood. I had a lot of different experiences with the paranormal. And as a matter of fact, I used to have what my parents would call religious visions, and I would wake up screaming and my parents were very, very Catholic, and so they always associated stuff with the paranormal to, seeing visions and stuff like that. And then I had abductions from the time I was very young. And when I hit 40, and I had experiences all the way through, I studied to be a medicine woman in my 20s. But when I hit my 40s is when something really amazing happened to me, and all my memories came back of alien experiences, things that happened at Los Alamos, in the area around Los Alamos Labs. And then, just being in New Mexico in the land of enchantment, you have all kinds of things happening. I have memory of working cattle because I was a cowgirl, and actually we rode up to a UFO. I actually touched it, felt it, but it didn't. The memory didn't come back to me until I hit 40. And so then I always had experiences, intense experiences, and then once I hit 40, I realized that the journey I had to just go full throttle on my research, and so that's what I ended up doing. And I contacted Norio Hayakawa, who was a very good friend of Michael's, and then that's how I met Michael, through his group in New Mexico. And so now here we are. It's been almost 10 years where we've been exploring the paranormal and going further and deeper into it.
That is amazing. And, I love Norio. He's great. I've had him on the podcast. He is a wealth of knowledge. And
he is.
I remember Mike, he mentioned the exact story that you just mentioned about the the interesting coincidences at some of these conferences. Let me get into dimensional walking a bit, because that's how I came about finding you guys. It's an amazing YouTube series that you have on YouTube, Dimensional Walking. And I really like the name. It really sort of goes with the whole shapeshifter motif. And how did you come across with that name? And what started you on that journey? Because you have all kinds of portal and vortex videos on there as well.
Well, I came up with the name because when I was in my early 20s, I was married to a medicine man. His name was Thunderbow. And he was working with me where we could call it anything that you want. It's maybe slightly remote viewing. Some of it's out of body. It's all kinds of. Think about the Carlos Castaneda series, the book series. We were working in something in that genre. And so he coined it Dimensional Walking because basically he was training me how to do it. And I was able to do amazing things in the dream state. I mean, I would leave, and the whole point of the training was to get me to bring something back. So because the whole thing that we were trying to do is to show that we're more than just our body. And one thing that I had told Thunderbow is that I had the Greys who were with me from the time I was very young. They taught it to me as well. They were teaching me how to do things because I remember them taking me, and sometimes they wouldn't take you, out the door. They'd take you through a wall. And so that's all a part of this. It's a different way of looking at the mind and looking at how we exist. And so I actually had an experience with a stone a couple of years ago called labradorite. And I had actually had a dream, a vision. I'm kind of going fast forward here, but I had a dream. I was shown this stone, labradorite, and I told Michael, I woke up, I said, I got to find this stone. I went and found it, and I started sleeping with it under my pillow, which isn't smart, but something that I was basically shown to do. And then I had an experience where I actually went into another dimension, another reality, very close to this one, and I couldn't get out of it. I was actually in a body looking through the eyes, and I could not get out. And I was in a house just like this one, except it was slightly positioned differently, where the stove was, where the refrigerator was, where our back room was. There was a little yappy dog. We would never have a yappy dog. I don't mind yappy dogs, but we wouldn't have one. Mm-hmm. And there's, just different things. And I was married to this man, and I'm like, who are you? And he's freaking out because he's like, what's wrong with you? And I went to bed in this other reality very close to this one, trying to wake myself up. Finally woke myself up, just sat up in bed, freaked out, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what just happened? Went and used the bathroom, came back to bed, immediately went back into that same reality again, and I knocked stuff over. I felt them. I felt how solid they were. I felt all kinds of stuff. And this is the stuff that I used to do in my 20s and what the Greys had taught me to do. I hadn't done it in years because it's a very scary thing to do if you can't control it. So anyways, for the second time, I couldn't get out of that reality, that realm. Finally, I just meditated and willed myself out of there, and I felt the tingly feeling of coming back into your body. And I woke myself up and realized that I could not have the stone underneath my pillow. I took the stone, moved it, and then I was telling Michael all about what had happened to me and how scared I was, because I actually woke him up. And that's when we realized that I had done dimensional walking. And because I had done it so much in my 20s and when I was a kid, and this labradorite stone just brought it all back to me. So now I'm a little bit more in control of it, but that's why we named our channel Dimensional Walking. Michael said, hey, let's just call our channel this. And there you go. That's the short end of it.
That's a great, I think
short
that,
end.
Sorry, that was long, but
no, it was perfect. A perfect elaboration. And, it's that what's so neat about this is, it does seem that there is a lot of pre-Southwestern origin involved with a lot of this type of thing, whether it be being able to know where a portal is, which I know you guys are very familiar with this, and elements of some of the, high strangeness, whether that be shapeshifters, frenzy witchcraft. All of this stuff does have kind of a pre-Southwestern origin. And so my tentative guess, you elaborated really well, and I'm glad you didn't hesitate. Really cool elements. And so now that we know more or less how you got such a cool name for your YouTube channel, can you tell our listeners a little bit about what you do on it?
Well, on a channel, what we try to do is, because I guess we're able to. One of the things of being doing this for such a very long time, like I probably noted, I've been doing it since I was a teenager, so that's well over 50 some years. Okay, and Rainbow's been doing it for over.
I didn't want to say you were old, but.
Oh, okay. So I'm old, Ryan, just so you know. If you didn't know that, I'm old. But anyways, Rainbow is very young, but she's been doing it for 40 years, but probably in a different lifetime also. So that gives her that youngness. But anyways, so we have quite a bit of experience. Not only experience of actually doing it, but also experience of researching it in the field in some cases, or going to books or libraries or things like that, and getting a lot of research from that. But anyways, on the dimensional walking, if you look at it, we probably have about maybe off by one or two, but at least 118 videos on there. Almost all of those are from our personal research or our personal experience. Yeah. So we try to keep it that way. We really typically do not have anybody else. Maybe someday we will, but we don't interview anybody. So that's what we have. So we have UFOs.
Not that we won't.
No, not that we won't, but we haven't up to this point. So we'll see.
And we hopefully will.
Yeah. But, we'll have the UFOs. We'll have Sasquatch. We'll have all different other cryptids. We'll have ghosts. We'll have giants. All kinds of stuff. And one of the things we try to do is we try to connect the dots. From a standpoint, we like to tell everybody and let everybody realize it's all connected. The world of paranormal, all these little, subtitles or sublets or whatever you want to call it, are all together. I mean, they're all connected by a common thread. And that's what we try to do. In some of our videos, maybe not all of them, but some of the videos we try to do that because we think it's really, really important. Because once you step into it, your foot into it, you probably will have some other experiences that are unrelated. Like maybe if you had a close encounter with a UFO or something like that. Now, if you have a close encounter, you've probably gone into a different realm. So that way, it's very possible you may suddenly start seeing ghosts, or you may see a cryptid, a Sasquatch, or something else. Because it's so connected. It really, really is, Ryan. Did I answer the question for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was the question.
It really, that I think that's a huge, you're nailing it. You're knocking it out of the park, because that's kind of where I was going to go with this, is how a shift happens. A shift takes place when you view, as an observer, when you see one of these things, it sort of opens your mind and your eyes to being able to see more of it. Have you noticed that?
Correct. Oh, absolutely.
I think that we're born to see it. I think we forget that. I look at it a little bit differently than Michael, because I've dealt with this since I was a child, and I think it has to do with one particular alien that used to be my little companion. His name was Meek Mohan. And from what I remember is that Meek Mohan basically told me that the reason why they love children is because we're just so open to all of it. We're just like right there. And I think that we forget that as we get older, we close off to these shifts that like you were stating. And so I think that at a certain point, some of us don't ever close off. And it's because especially when the paranormal is a part of your life, because I think people believe the paranormal and everything that happens to it is outside of us, but it's also inside of us too. And so the attraction isn't just what's out there, it's also discovering what's inside you.
Mm-hmm. That makes perfect sense. And, I have taken part in retreats that have sort of focused, some of them are shorter, others can be as long as, these 5-night ceremonies. And, with sweat lodges and emetic ceremonies. And, it does seem that as time gathers and as time goes on, even the skeptics begin, they begin to give descriptions of things that can positively be described as paranormal. And it is, I think there's different procedures, obviously, that people take to do this. But I mean, the first obvious step is a lot of people just stay home on their couches watching TV and they don't get out there like you guys do. It's what would you tell listeners is a good way to just kind of start opening your minds to seeing some of these things?
Well, for me, basically would be one thing is get out in nature. Just getting out in nature and maybe sitting someplace. And I always say, find a place. If you're going to go out in nature, you want to have a quiet place. You don't want to have a lot of human beings around for sure. And then I always say, make sure there's a stream close by. That's really important, especially for cryptids and weed people, things like that. And go to that same spot, a quiet place again. Sit on the ground with your feet kind of implanted in the earth, and basically just wait. And if you're a meditator, of course, that would be another one of the things I always tell you. Meditation is really a good way to make connections with the other realms and the other worlds. But even while you're sitting there at a little stream bank somewhere, you want to kind of clear your mind as absolutely as clear as possible and ask for permission of nature and whatever's in the vicinity to come and communicate with you. Sometimes it takes quite a bit of time. You have to be committed to go back there on a regular basis and wait, basically, and they will come. I don't know which ones will come, but they will come. To me, that is probably number one thing to do. I really believe that. You meditating at home you could also bring some ETs or something like that to you. Again, Rainbow can talk about maybe a little bit of protection that she should always have, because opening yourself up too much, like maybe a Ouija board type example, is really, really very dangerous. So, go ahead, Rainbow.
Well, I think that for me the first step is to be open to it, because a lot of people try to make it much more difficult than it needs to be. Personally, for me, if I'm open to it, I don't have to leave our home. I don't have to leave the front or backyard. I can actually have it happen here. I think what's good, it's good for people to get away from something that is structured and to get out, like Michael was saying, and to be in nature. Because once we allow something to connect to us, they will come. Because basically, we are, as far as I'm concerned, a part of the paranormal, and as much as we try to figure out who they are, and whoever they is, and it can be Sasquatch, it can be Dogman, it can be a Shadow Man, it can be Skinwalker, it can be your ally, it can be an alien, it can be anything. But the one thing, they're looking at us. As much as we are trying to figure out who they are, they're trying to figure out who we are. So it's not a one-sided situation here. So I think if you're open to communication, what you have to understand is there's a responsibility to that. You can't be you can't ask for something to contact you and then go scream and run off when it does. That's what you see in a lot of the different shows that happen today. People go out for the scare factor, and they affect the paranormal. And the paranormal, I think, to this day is being affected by how people react to it. And it makes it harder, in some senses, for people like us, when we go out there asking for communication. Just imagine if you go ask for communication and you go screaming, whatever is there, if it's been dealing with humans, like 10, 20, whatever research groups coming out there, it's not going to be very friendly after that. So how we have relationships with the paranormal, with whatever's in there, affects everybody. And I think people have to understand that once you're open to it and you're willing to be open to it, there's a responsibility to it. And then at that point, you have to do safety protocols. You have to make sure you put down the line in the sand as far as what you will accept and what you won't. A lot of people don't understand they can do that, because I truly believe being born on this planet, we have that divine resonance here, because we have the Earth's frequency in our bodies. So that means that we have our right to be here. Something else is visiting, it's got to ask for permission. But I think we can have a good relationship with everything. We just have to be smart about it. And I think that if there's something negative out there, you want to keep that away, but you have to sense what it is. And I think our empathic abilities that we were grown up with, that we kind of closed off to, just reopen them again. And that's another way you can actually help protect yourself.
Rainbow, that is awesome. And you said the magic word. You were just talking about it. the Witchery way and were animals. And I mean, there's a major dividing line between, just being open to these things and where it is taken by, let's just say witchery, sorcery, or wizardry, especially in these southwestern areas. And you've had some experiences with the witchery way and were animals, and you've seen some sightings of shapeshifters, correct?
Oh, yeah. When I was studying to be a medicine woman, I dealt with two different types of witches. And then after, when I was a dancer, and then I actually had a really negative experience with a Persian witch. And I also had experiences with shapeshifters, and I also believe I had an experience with a skinwalker, and there's a very big difference between, to me, a shapeshifter, a skinwalker, and a dark shaman or witch. Mm-hmm. So I've had experiences with all of them, and each one showed elements that were a little bit different. So I understood kind of through trial and error how to deal with these types of this. It's a crazy mindset. Each one has, and very, very dangerous. Don't think that a witch is any less dangerous than a skinwalker, because it's just not true. So they all have dangerous elements to them. You just have to figure out how to keep up your protection and just deal with the situation.
Yeah, and it reminds me of a saying I heard, and it made a lot of sense at the time, and that is, all skinwalkers are witches, but not all witches are skinwalkers. And this it's fascinating to me, absolutely fascinating when you study into all the cultural, like where it all came from. How it's believed that witchery started under the ground, and first man and first woman and coyote, these three started it, and how after everybody got above ground, I guess first woman gave it out, and there's a lot of snake worship that's involved too. And there are animals that, traditionally speaking, Native Americans, when they see these animals, and if they look at all out of place, that's a hint to kind of watch your back, isn't it?
Yes, it definitely is. I think that specific elementals take on, when they shapeshift, they can take on a form of an animal. And I don't think that everything that people see in the forest is actually that particular animal. I don't think that it has to be something that is human that is going to be that animal. I think that Michael and I understand the forest, or anywhere where there's nature, that there's elementals out there. There's the shadowy aspect of the forest where these different entities can come out and actually shapeshift. And they can form into something that looks bizarre. I mean, there's people who said they've seen deer that actually walk on two legs. And I don't think it necessarily has to do with any dark, like scary shape-shifting stuff as far as the human concept is concerned. I think it's elemental as well. I think we forget that in the forest, that the fairy folk, the Wee people, all those groups of people, those beings live there. And so the Native Americans have totally got this, they've never lost the idea that we share the forest. And so sometimes we come across something that doesn't look right, and everybody's always saying, oh, it's a demon, oh, it's negative, oh, it's scary. Well, it might be an elemental trying to shapeshift into something that looks familiar to us, because we're looking at our library of what's familiar, and then it's trying to get away from us. And I always notice that when people do see, not all the time, but sometimes they see animals that are acting strange and weird, they're always thinking of it being something negative and scary and bad. But maybe it just might be the elementals in the forest, just doing their thing, trying to not be so scary for us. Because I think sometimes if they showed what they really look like, it could be pretty scary.
Yes. And I'm really glad that you've kind of touched on the basic, like, truths of a very complex system. And it's so important to get that protection, like Mike and yourself were talking about. A lot of people will go out and not have any kind of, let's just call it spiritual protection, whatever that may be. And some of these things are tricksters, and they mimic things that, as you mentioned, and even though you go out with the idea that these are friends and they all should be friends, you always have to be protected. And let's talk about what's known as the hitchhiker effect, or, when you bring some of this bad energy home with you. Have you ever had any cases or heard of any cases of this happening? And what could you tell listeners about that?
Let me kind of set this one up a little bit, and Rainbow will finish the end of it.
Oh, great.
When we lived in Utah, and I lived in Utah twice. Rainbow lived in it once with me. We lived in Sandy, Utah. And so we did a lot of exploring. We did quite a few videos on our experiences we had in Utah, because we really thought Utah was pretty incredible as far as the paranormal goes, and just the sheer beauty of Utah is pretty incredible, right? Mm-hmm. So, of course, we always were interested in Skinwalker Ranch, okay? So we did a little expedition, a kind of a day trip it was, and we didn't live that far away. Ryan, as you probably know, I don't know, Sandy was probably, maybe a couple hours or so. I don't quite remember exactly how long it took us to get there, but that could probably be correct. Anyway, so we went to Skinwalker Ranch, and of course, we couldn't get inside, of course. At that time, I'm not sure who controlled it. I think it was NITS. Was it NITS?
I think at that point, Bigelow still owned it, but it was just before he sold it to the new owner.
Okay. Right. I think this was, what year would it have been, like 7 years ago, 7 years ago?
I think it would have been about 2015.
Yeah, something like that, maybe 14-ish.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we went out there. So we hung out basically at the front gate, which I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, Ryan. Mm-hmm. And it had the cameras there.
Oh, tons of cameras.
Cameras everywhere, right?
And they're angled right at you, and they're turning.
Right, they're turning. It's all pretty crazy, and we're waving at them and, doing things nice to them. And so anyways, we're standing there, and of course we had this Rainbow had this incredible experience, and we don't know if it was a tiny little drone that was a dragonfly or what. But it was incredible, because
it stayed by me for 20 minutes.
Yeah, it stayed by her, and it was like in her face, almost like it was trying to communicate with her. That was just, in itself, if nothing else happened, that would have been quite incredible. Yeah. So the other thing Rainbow did, being an empath as she is, she observed the area and tried to pick up where the vortexes were, correct?
Oh, but don't forget, we did protection before we went.
Yes, okay. It is important for the rest of the story to let you know we did protection.
We did sagebrush.
Sagebrush.
We saged ourselves.
Right.
He did me, I did him.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm. That's sort of important, because we just want to let you know it doesn't always work so well. So anyways, we got there, and we spent quite a bit of time there, a couple hours at least, I think. And so we were absorbing it. Rainbow got some readings out there on the property. Got information. She really did know, which turned out to be where a vortex was. The story becomes a little longer, because I ended up talking to the guy that owns it now. Mm-hmm. I communicated with him, and I guess it was his son that got back to me and sort of confirmed that wherever Rainbow said the vortex was actually could be the location, what they had found out through the TV series, etc. So it was I thought maybe that would open the door for us to go up there and go on the property, but it really didn't. No. For whatever the reasons, it's fine. But the whole thing about it, so that was a couple hours. We absorbed it. Nothing major happened to us at that point. But then
I was disappointed, I will say that.
Well, yeah.
I was expecting, I don't know what I was expecting, but something more.
Yeah, but then we could definitely feel the energy. I felt the energy was there. So, I thought it was pretty cool. So anyway, so we go back home, right? Mm-hmm. And this is where I'm gonna let Rainbow take over, because this is more a little bit of her world than it was mine. So go ahead, Rainbow.
So before we actually finished the drive home, Michael pulled over and we saged each other again, and that that was just to make sure that, we didn't bring anything back home with us, which is really funny because the paranormal isn't, bound by, gates and fences and, it's just, it's just going to be wherever it's going to be. And so we get home, Michael pulls into the garage, and I hear two distinct voices. One says, "Hello, I'm Amadeus," and the other one says, "I'm Antioch," and is very, very stern. And I'm like, I'm looking around thinking, Michael's punking me, right? Michael's saying something to me. I'm like, I said, Michael, I just heard two voices, and he's not surprised because at this point he's gotten to know me. I said I think something follows back home. And so, as you know, Ryan, that's the one thing that happens at Skinwalker Ranch. All these people have experiences where these entities and beings follow you home. So it doesn't matter how much, whatever you try to do, if they're curious about you, they're going to follow you home. So, I'm like, wow, well, I think we were followed home. And that's a little disconcerting in a way because you're thinking, yeah, you did all this protection and stuff. And I think we kind of set the boundary there. But anyway, so I tell Michael, he's like, oh, interesting, well, let's just see what happens. And so then we started having all this poltergeist activity happening. And so Amadeus is what explained to me who it is. It would have to be like the new pronouns now. It's a they because Amadeus is a male and a female, and Amadeus holds down and is actually part of the vortex at Skinwalker Ranch. And I know people are going to think it's nuts, but that's what it told me. And I saw Amadeus. I saw what Amadeus looks like, and Amadeus is just beautiful, all energy in a form of a human body. Now, Antioch is a jinn, and Antioch was the one I was concerned with because Antioch made it clear he doesn't like humans, but they were curious because they knew that I picked up on stuff. And when you're empathic, these beings know. And so I ended up drawing Antioch, and I ended up drawing Amadeus. And, I showed Michael and I did it like Antioch kind of looks a little bit more like a Mad Max kind of character, because he just has that crazy look to him. And he looks like a djinn as well. Amadeus just has all this energy coming from them. So it was pretty cool to see what they look like. But Antioch wanted to talk to me, and I told Antioch, no, I don't want to talk to you. I don't like humans. I'm a human, and you're probably going to be mean to me. And because I wouldn't talk to Antioch, poltergeist activity started happening in the house. And so Antioch liked the Katina dolls that I have, and he would turn them around. And then I would turn them back, and then, they would be back the other way. And then the picture that I drew of him, I put it away in a drawer, and all of a sudden it would be on top of the printer, and the printer would print out another copy of him.
Yeah, this printing of the copy is completely crazy.
And he does it at like 11:30 at night when I'm, downstairs in the dark by myself, and it would scare the bejeebies out of me because also my printer would start, and then there a picture of him would be, and so I would take the new print of the drawing, and I would just stick them into a file and put them in a drawer, and his pictures would still end up on the printer. And so this one night after he had done that to me, I'm like, well, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm just not going to do it. So I go, Michael's already in bed. I go in, I take a shower, and I'm thinking about this in the shower, and so I get ready for bed. I just get into the bed, lie my head down, and Antioch had taken the shower caddy, totally lifted it off the shower head, and the shower head is huge. So it's one of those caddies that has to be lifted up and off in order for it to fall off. I mean, it just can't do it by itself. There's just no way. And he took it and he threw it. And he threw everything that was in the shower. Oh, and it was so loud. The cat jumped up. Everybody woke up. And so I went into the shower and I saw what had happened. And I told Michael, I said, look, I'm going to take care of this tomorrow. I'm going to talk to Antioch, but I'm going to, set rules down. So Michael leaves the next day, and I have a talk with Antioch. I said, Antioch, you can't just do this. I said, I'll listen to you, but once you talk to me, it's over and done with. You have to respect what I tell you, because I'm not going to keep doing this with you. Because I have a true belief in the archangels, and I will ask them to protect me. So you just need to be cool. Mm-hmm. So Antioch gave me all this information about what jinn are, and I said, great. He wanted me to get the word out, and I said, thank you very much. And after he talked to me, I put his picture away, and I said, this ends it. We're done. And so Antioch actually respected my wishes. I know people are going to think that's nuts, but I don't believe that we're that fragile as humans. I think that once we put our foot down, that they will honor what we say, because a jinn is not a demon, and that was the main core thing he wanted me to say to people. I know in the Mideast they believe that jinn are demons, but Antioch said that they are not. You can take that for what it's worth. I don't know. But anyways, those were the two entities or beings that came to us at the house, and that came from Skinwalker Ranch.
Fascinating. It's so, you are not crazy. I can tell you that.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm speaking for Rainbow.
Yeah, we have a bit of a base camp there adjacent in the area known as Space Wolf Research. And,
Ooh.
The similarity and the independently obtained accounts from different informants as far as some of the names, places, sequence of events that you have just shared is astonishing. The pattern modalities of something following you home, trying to communicate, basically kind of throwing a fit because they can. And it sounds like you navigated this a lot better than most people do. And it's probably because of your knowledge that these things can happen, and that you each separately protected each other to an extent. And I'm glad that you brought all this up, because there are people that when they witness, many times, many first-time observers, witnesses to these events, when they first observe the power of some of these entities and precognitive sentient intelligences, they automatically go to either demons or angels. They automatically, it's like they go to that setting. It's got to be one or the other of the extremes. And I'm really glad that you brought this up, because there is a hierarchy of these things. And a lot of times it's in a gray area. And you have to remember that you can call upon things like archangels to protect you, and that these things are not all powerful. And, they can flex their muscles, so to speak, from an energetic perspective. And I agree with you 100% that they love to engage with electronics. Oh my gosh, do they ever love to engage with electronics? I love the story about the printer.
Yeah. Yeah.
They can manifest with those. The printer is a perfect example of how they can manifest in electronics. I think that's a great share. I appreciate that. Yeah. Did you notice?
That was pretty exciting.
Now, I would love to see these drawings as well at some point, maybe, if we could figure that out. But yeah, your references to the insinuations of this possibly being a jinn, that goes right along the lines of what has been coined by Colonel John Alexander, who was there with the Department of Defense in the area. And he could best describe it as a precognitive sentient intelligence. I didn't make that up. I'm borrowing it from him. It's his term, but it's a good term, because these things have abilities that people just don't have.
You're right. And I think that when something tries to communicate with us, I think that when we walk, well, let me put it to you this way. When we first walk into a room and we see people, we don't always assume the worst. I mean, we may see somebody and we're like going, oh, well, I mean, I'm not going to walk over that way because maybe you might get a feeling from them. But when you walk into a room, you don't always assume the worst with people. And I think when you're in this field, you cannot do that either. You cannot just go onto a ranch, as we all know, Skinwalker Ranch, and just assume the worst, because there's, as you were stating, different shades of gray of the paranormal. And not everything is evil and horrible and dark and wants to devour you and eat you. It just basically sometimes wants to be left alone, or it wants communication with you. And then the good aspects of the ranch, the interesting parts about that ranch are the fact that I think that, and you were talking about it, there's magic that happens on Skinwalker Ranch, and I think it's been coined and it's been sold into this genre of something that's very scary. And I think, as a medicine woman, for me, I want to go firsthand and see what this magic is all about, because I think that what's happened on Skinwalker Ranch is before the Native Americans. That vortex is a natural vortex. It's one that the aliens have known about for hundreds of thousands of years. I think that they've used it for longer than that, probably, because they've known about it for probably longer. I just think it's something that if you're an alien intelligence, you're going to know where all these portals are all over the world. Skinwalker Ranch happens to be one of those portals. Like, there's 7 magic mountains, on the planet. The Taos Mountain happens to be one of them. And I think that at Skinwalker Ranch, that is that's a very vital portal, because I think that's where a lot of major traffic goes and comes from. And I don't think it's just UFOs. I don't think it's just unknown aerial phenomena. I think that entities go back and forth through that. I think that's basically what these portals are for, to make it a little bit easier. I think that's why Sasquatch is seen around there, because it's easier for Sasquatch, for the portal jumpers, because we have a Sasquatch that has been in contact with us years ago, Loki, who's a portal jumper. Mm-hmm. And so I think I can understand why these portals are vital to this planet. I think they're the major arteries of the planet. I think they're necessary for the survival of this planet.
Yeah, and let me make a comment on that, because Ryan, as you know, I do something called vortex photography. So one of the things that I've always learned was there are some vortexes or portals that are permanent. I think the one at Skinwalker Ranch is definitely a permanent one.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I've been to other ones that move around, okay? They could be there one day, they could be there 3 weeks from now, but they will actually move. I've been in another vortex up in Montana. Well, no, let me see that. I'm sorry. I went into Montana. I went back into Idaho. A major vortex there. That's been there probably for the same amount of times, and stuff would come and go through that vortex. Pretty amazing stuff. And UFOs and all the things Rainbow mentioned.
And one thing I wanted to add too, Ryan, is that Loki talked to me about the traveling ghosts, and he said there's 2 to 3, I can't remember how many, of these portals that are sentient beings, and they travel. And I actually experienced one of them when I was working cattle in the Big Bend part of Texas. We actually had a stampede happen because one of these portals and these intelligent portals and it was massive. And I'm talking, I don't know how many miles long, but it went over the Mexican steers, and they just went for it. They went nuts. They just started running, and it was chaos. So, and I talked to Loki about what that was, and he said that they called the Sasquatch called those type of portals the traveling ghosts. So.
Yeah, good that's a good interpretation, and I'm glad you guys mentioned it being a permanent fixture and something that is kind of used as a paranormal highway by a variety of entities. It's not just one thing, and that's the problem with many. I guess it's not a closed-minded belief, but a lot of times people want closure, and they want to put things in boxes and say, this is because of that, they're done, now move on. And when it comes to these portals, you can't do that because you're literally it's like you're watching a main artery of energy being utilized, and it is being perfectly manifested by a variety of different entities, and they use this for various reasons, and it's amazing. I remember a story that I was told about a gentleman who was watching a portal open up. And as he was watching this portal open up, he looked to his right and saw what appeared to be an alien gray, also watching the portal open up. And they kind of weren't paying attention to each other. And that just kind of drives the point that there's multiple things going on, and whatever has your attention at the moment might not be the only thing going on.
Right.
That's interesting. Now,
Wow.
you have had some other family members who themselves have had interesting stories and experiences with paranormal things. And I want to say, was this in New Mexico? Was this correct, Mike?
This is in Arizona.
In Arizona. I apologize.
Which one we talk?
No, was it Kim or Tanya with the Skinwalker?
That was Kim in Arizona.
Kim, okay.
Yeah. This particular one was in Arizona. This is with one of my daughters. So here's how the story goes. My daughter was with her boyfriend, and we lived in Tucson at the time, and they were traveling south of Tucson. Probably it was about 10 or 15 miles, and they were off on kind of a dirt road. And I guess they pulled up to a stop sign, and my daughter obviously was not sure. She was in the passenger seat, and she looked in her side view mirror, could see kind of right next to the vehicle, but back a little ways, and she saw what she initially perceived as a runner coming towards her. She couldn't really tell if it was a male or female at that time, but it was a runner, and she didn't really give it much thought. I guess one of the things I think she kind of had in her mind is seemed to be running quite fast. But she said she didn't really, because when somebody runs directly at you or you're seeing somebody coming directly at you, you can't really easily judge the speed of it if you're just visually looking at it. So they're at this stop sign, and that was a lot of stuff for just sitting at a stop sign, but that's sort of what was going through her head. And so they started off from the stop sign, and this is like a rural area, just so you know. It was a dirt road. So they're driving, and they're up to about 30 miles an hour. And my daughter just looked in the mirror, and this, whatever it was, I guess she thought it was a woman, I guess, was gaining on them at 30 miles an hour. Now, I don't think, if I remember correctly, and I was a sprinter.
Yeah, no human can run that fast.
That can actually run at 30 miles an hour. So anyways, they were going about 30, and then they got up to 35, and all of a sudden, whatever this was, well, we're going to say it was a woman at this point, was right next to them, and they're still driving at 35 miles an hour, okay?
Whoa.
And so this entity, at this point we're going to have to call it an entity because it wasn't human, was looking straight forward, was not looking at them, okay? And I believe the window was down. I think she had the window down, right? So now she gets this amazing look at this whatever it was.
Skinwalker.
So this truly, I believe, was a skinwalker.
Yeah.
Had long, straggly hair, had kind of a gnarly looking kind of a face or nose, I guess kind of a sea haggy look, if you know what that means, and strange, almost black eyes. Now, she did say there was some white in it, but it was a lot of dark, okay? And it's still looking forward, right? But then suddenly, like in a blink of an eyelash, it is looking at her, okay? Completely almost wiped my daughter out at this time. Now, the driver didn't see too much of all this, okay? That driver was focused, although he did look over and did see it, and then he was super focused on where he's going because he wanted to get the heck out of there. So this kept on running, this entity, which is, we're going to call it Skinwalker, this thing kept on running, looking inside at my daughter almost incredible because we're talking, I think they were up to, let's say, 35, 40, maybe even 45 miles an hour. I don't remember exactly what the ending
Speed was.
Speed was when they ended. But she said suddenly, and this is, well, I'll tell you another story in a little bit. Suddenly, this Skinwalker just went to the right, just completely blew to the right. And the only thing they can think of, it blew to the right because they were coming onto some residential areas, some houses, etc. And I don't think they wanted to get in the middle of that at all. So it just blew to the right. And, you know, my daughter somewhat remembers, she told me the story when we lived in Tucson. And then as time went on, and we're talking, this probably goes back to the late 1990s, her memory fades, and it's almost like, to a certain extent,
She doesn't want to remember it.
She doesn't want to remember it.
Yeah.
She had then here's one that connects a little bit more. All my daughters have had some pretty interesting experiences. But one of the videos I did was also another experience for the same daughter. And we're not going to go into it because it's a pretty long story. But she had a very similar experience driving through, I believe it was Wyoming on the interstate. And it was an incredible story where they went through this fog, and this being came right in front of them, and they almost felt that they were going to run over it. They thought they ran over a person, but there was no person there. So again, this is a point where throughout her life she's had some really interesting experiences, alien type of abduction type experience, etc. And then she keeps on having them. She seems to have gained some kind of ability from maybe some of those initial encounters she had, and maybe because her mind was open up enough to see some new things later in her life. So anyway, so that was the Skinwalker story of one of my daughters. So the only thing I wanted to ask you, Randy, can we take a little bit of a break and maybe start our second session here in a little bit?
That's exactly what I was going to say. Let's wrap this up, this first segment. You're reading my mind. And I just wanted to finish with saying, Rainbow, I'm so glad that you mentioned Castaneda and how, like, the Eagle's Gift and like the Eagle Way Man is way stronger than the Witchery people. I think that's a good ending note, that there is good in the world, and it's easy to go down the slippery slope of negativity, but I think that was really good that you mentioned that, and that's a good way to kind of end this first segment. And let's pick up where we left off here soon. Man, oh man, Rainbow and Mike are some of my favorite people to talk to because of the amount of experience they have, the amount of knowledge and working knowledge in the field that they have dealing with the things that go bump in the night. I think they've definitely spent their time out on those ranch roads, in those portal and vortex areas. If you have a chance, please check out their YouTube channel, Dimensional Walking, and keep in touch with them. They always have great stuff that they're dropping. And Mike's portal and vortex photography is actually quite stunning. And keep an eye out for part 2 of this series with Rainbow and Mike. And we are going to talk more. That's right. More about wizardry, southwestern sorcery, shapeshifters, portals, UFOs, vortexes, and cryptozoology. Part 2 is patron only, so go to Patreon and look for Hero Paranormal, and you can hear part 2. It's great. Part 2 will be coming soon, and thanks for tuning in. Until next time, keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground, but don't forget to take a look around.
Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast